Post from Brad Garlinghouse saying RLUSD has been nearly a year in the making, and with their trusted exchange partners, market makers, and advisory board, RLUSD is set to become the gold standard for enterprise-grade stablecoins built on trust, liquidity, and compliance. Well, this is massive because Ripple stablecoin is now a recognized crypto token under the Dubai Financial Services Authority regime in Dubai, which is just going to further expand Ripple's footprint across the UAE and the Middle East. And this week, we're going to see massive announcements about the Genius Act to propel America's payment system into the 21st century and finally give clarity for stablecoins that everyone's been looking for. Listen to what Senator Bill Hagerty, the former U.S. ambassador to Japan, just said.
Yes, those conversations are underway. I certainly respect the process that we're addressing. But right now, this really isn't about policy, nor is it process. We're just trying to get floor time right now to get this processed. We have broad agreement, Kaylee, with respect to the content of this stablecoin legislation, My Genius Act. And this is going to, I think, take us into the 21st century in terms of upgrading our payment systems. It's going to have very desirable effects, taking the U.S. economy into the digital assets arena, keeping innovation here, lowering risk here in America, and putting in place guardrails that will protect consumers, because every one of these stablecoins will be backed up dollar for dollar with U.S. treasuries. Very positive outcome here. We've got very strong support.
So what's happening, guys? Institutional access to crypto is accelerating with the Genius Act, and from the launch of XRP futures and ETFs on CME and the NASDAQ just this week, it's clear the market is maturing and exposure to crypto is expanding. Look at this post right here from Ripple. Here's Brad Garlinghouse explaining why crypto ETFs are a big deal.
1 minute on why are people excited about crypto ETFs. I think there's two main factors going on here. One is, for the longest time, institutional investors primarily trading on Wall Street, really haven't been able to access crypto directly. Their options were to either self-custody, onboard with an exchange, and some people don't like centralized exchanges for a whole host of reasons. So this was really the first time you had institutions be able to go on Wall Street and trade directly in crypto. This is an unlock for a couple reasons. For capital that couldn't come in, whether it's an endowment, whether it's a pension fund, even mutual funds that didn't or couldn't access crypto, now they can. The second thing is, it really is institutionalizing the entire industry of crypto. I think it should be no surprise that the Bitcoin ETF was the fastest ETF ever to get to $1 billion in assets. I think it passed 10 billion in assets faster than anyone as well. And today I think we'll eventually close in on the gold ETF, and that's in 1 minute.
So he struggled a little bit to get that off, but there's plenty of other reasons for ETFs that are bullish. And some other bullish news are these key dates. June 16th in the next week marks the end of the 60-day pause granted in the Ripple versus SEC case to explore potential settlement. So if no agreement is reached or no status update is filed by then, the appeals process will resume. So eventually this is a bullish catalyst to look forward to, because the news alone of the lawsuit is just going to be positive for XRP. It just depends on when it's dropped and what's happening on the price action of the chart at the time for Bitcoin and the rest of the industry, which I'll get into in a little bit. But July 14th, next month, the US Fedwire Fund Service for ISO 222 migration. This was rescheduled, and now this will give institutions more time to prepare, but time's going to fly by very, very quick. It's in a month and about a week from now. Also, we have big news happening this week for the Genius Act, focusing on creating clear regulatory framework for stablecoins. By September 30th, all U.S. federal agencies must stop issuing paper checks and switch to electronic payments, including direct deposits and real-time methods when possible. So this is an executive order modernizing federal payments and encouraging real-time options. By October 9th, towards the end of the year, all Euro area banks must send instant payments. Fees must not exceed those of regular SEPA transfers. And by October 18th and 19th, the SEC has been given a 240-day deadline to decide on the Grayscale XRP Trust and the 21 shares XRP Trust ETFs with deadlines on those days respectively. And by November of this year, all financial institutions using SWIFT for cross-border payments must fully adopt ISO 222. The MIT messaging standard will be discontinued, and towards the end of this year, ISO 222 is expected to become the global standard for financial messaging, covering 80% of the world's transaction volume, 87% of total transaction value. And if you guys didn't watch my previous video, I broke down why Ripple is an important factor for ISO 222. But if you didn't watch that video, check this out. Back in May of 2020, Ripple became the first blockchain company focused on distributed ledger technology to join the ISO 222 registration management group. a key standards body overseeing the standards development. So this position allowed Ripple to influence the future of global payment standards, ensuring distributed ledger technology's role in financial messaging. They're not just compliant, guys. They were the first company to join their management group. That's like being the first pick in the NBA draft. So that tells us everything that we need to know. And plus, Ripple's global payment network, RippleNet, was designed with ISO 222 compatibility in mind, enabling them to connect seamlessly with financial institutions worldwide through a standardized API, facilitating interoperability with traditional bank systems, which has been their plan all along. So this is just going to enhance cross-border payments and allow XRP to be used as a bridge asset in their on-demand liquidity service, which aligns with ISO 222's goal of reducing costs and settlement times for cross-border payments. This week is shaping up to be a whirlwind, whereas Monday, tomorrow, US and China trade talks kick off, so we're going to see some volatility around that. On Wednesday, the CPI data drop, so inflation insights are going to be incoming. And then on Thursday, the PPI data is following. And in 9 days from right now, we have the FOMC meeting with Jerome Powell talking about what's going to happen for interest rates. So 99% are expecting Jerome Powell to keep the rates where they're at, unless something crazy happens and he expects to cut rates. We're going to see what he says for the next few meetings coming up, because the next meeting after June 18th is July 30th, and 83% are expecting Jerome Powell to keep rates current again. So Trump is going to have to find a way to get Jerome Powell out of there if he wants rates to be cut over the next 1 to 2 meetings. That has been tightening on their balance sheet ever since 2022 until this starts to see some leeway and starts to work its way back up. Kind of like what happened here. You guys see back in 2020, February 2020, when it started to spike drastically. This is what really caused the bull run, on top of low interest rates, the CARES Act, where they signed trillions of dollars into law for stimulus checks. It was the perfect storm of opportunity, and M2 global liquidity exploded as well too. So we have the Fed tightening on their balance sheet. We have them keeping rates higher for longer. M2 is going up. We need the other two catalysts to explode the crypto market. So of what I'm seeing on the XRP price chart as well too, and confluence on the total 2 chart, and what I just showed you guys with the bearish divergence, which is why I'm up over $8,000 on this trade right here. So I don't look at XRP as something that I date. I look at it as something that I trade. Now I do also hold XRP long term. That's a different conversation and a different portion of my portfolio. But I do think it's smart to be able to grow your portfolio, learning how to capitalize on short-term swing trades. Because when we look at the Wyckoff schematic right here, we can see the breakdown in phase A for XRP, ever since the 14th of May, when XRP topped out up here at about $2.64. I talked about this breakout, by the way, several weeks ago when XRP was sitting at $2.19, explaining how XRP was about to break out into the zone and face some resistance to come back down. And also, pairing that up with the Wyckoff schematic, we saw XRP do just that. It broke all the way up into this key zone of resistance, all the way from back here since the beginning of March, where XRP gets rejected from the zone, peaking out $2.65, and now we're coming back down, which is the markdown of phase A. And so what we see here is a key level of support for XRP right here at $2.08, and also down here at $2.06. So that's the current support right now. Unless we break below it, then this will be the support that we watch for phase B, where, as you guys can see on the Wyckoff schematic, we break all the way up here to resistance. We break all the way up to here to resistance, get rejected, come all the way back down, get rejected, come all the way back down. And then we just range between resistance, which is what we're doing right now, ranging between resistance. And then in the shorter time frame, right now we're on the hour, but the 15-minute chart showed a bearish divergence with the price chart making higher highs, and then the stochastic RSI and the relative strength index making lower highs. And so unless we break above $2.30 and total 2 breaks above $1.2 trillion, then in my opinion, I think XRP comes all the way back down to these levels down here, and then even could go below them for the spring phase right here before coming back up as the final test before the SOS phase. And we finally break, $2.30. We go through some type of SOS in phase D right here on the Wyckoff schematic, right at these key resistance lines, which is about $2.30. So whether we go above it or we consolidate right through it, something like this, before going into phase E and the markup phase for the next breakout for XRP is what I would expect. The real question is how low is this spring phase going to put XRP? Are we going to see some type of flash crash, massive wick to the downside, or is it just going to be right around like $2 to $2.05? That's what I don't know. So we're going to be watching the key indicators on the more macro time frames. Instead of the hour, we'll be looking at the 4-hour, and we'll also be looking at the daily, because right now the 4-hour, we're experiencing bearish cross all the way up here. So I would not be buying into XRP right now while we're all the way up at 90 and 80 on the stochastic RSI, the relative strength index is at 61. That's why I'm shorting XRP right now, because I do think XRP is going to range a little bit longer. It even has further to the downside to go, and even a final spring phase to liquidate a lot of leverage long traders, which would be just a classic thing for XRP to do, as it's done so many different times in the past, just to liquidate everyone and piss everybody off. I would expect something like that to happen before XRP just sends it higher and starts breaking out closer to the ISO 222 adoption, like leading into later July and even October and November when it's finally functional. So just get ready for this spring phase right here. That, in my opinion, may be the last opportunity to accumulate XRP this bull run, because that breakout for XRP, in my opinion, would be when Bitcoin's dominance tops out and starts dropping to the downside. Because as we can see right here on the monthly, Bitcoin's dominance has just been in a massive uptrend, forming higher highs and higher lows. But the stochastic RSI is at 98 and 95, so we're in overvalued conditions for Bitcoin's dominance. The relative strength index is at the highest that it's ever been, and also the MACD, you guys can see, just keeps climbing higher and higher and higher. Eventually, we're going to see a bearish cross where this blue line, the MACD line, crosses below the signal line. When the relative strength index tops out, I'd expect some type of maybe blow off top at like 80, 90, closer to 100. So I think Bitcoin's dominance has a little higher to go. And then eventually we break down on the relative strength index and we form a bearish cross on the stochastic RSI to come down below 80. This is what I would expect.